Victor Harrington was a name that commanded respect in Asheville, North Carolina. As one of the wealthiest and most influential men in the state, he was the epitome of success. At 72, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had built an empire brick by brick, starting with real estate and later venturing into industries others only dreamed of. Today, Victor sat at the heart of Golden Grove Bistro, a luxurious cafe nestled amidst manicured trees and fountains. The sun bathed the scene in a golden hue, and the aroma of freshly baked bread mingled with the hum of polite conversation. Opposite, Victor sat his much younger wife, Clara Whitmore, a woman whose beauty turned heads wherever she went. Her perfectly styled hair and crimson lips radiated elegance, but behind her poised demeanor was a sharp coldness. She toyed absent-mindedly with her diamond bracelet, her attention flitting between her phone and her husband, though Victor seemed oblivious to her indifference. Outside the bistro, Ethan Miller, a homeless boy no older than 14, stood unnoticed. His oversized hoodie hung loosely on his thin frame, and his dark eyes darted from plate to plate through the patio's ornate iron fencing. Ethan's stomach growled as he scanned the luxurious meals that were worlds apart from the scraps he scavenged on the streets. The bistro's patrons ignored him, their laughter and clinking glasses a cruel reminder of the life he didn't belong to. But then Ethan's eyes locked on Clara, and what he saw made his breath catch in his throat. Victor had just adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses and reached for his phone when Clara's hand slipped into her designer handbag. She pulled out a small vial and, with a practiced flick, poured its contents into Victor's steaming soup. The liquid dissolved instantly, leaving no trace. Clara stirred the soup with feigned nonchalance before leaning closer to Victor, her tone sweet but laced with venom. "After everything I've endured, don't you dare ruin this now," she whispered. Ethan froze. Had he really just seen that? His chest tightened as he replayed the scene in his mind. Could someone so polished, sitting in a place so perfect, truly be capable of something so sinister? He felt an instinct to run, to leave this unsettling moment behind, but another part of him screamed to act. Victor's spoon hovered over the bowl, unaware of the danger inches from his lips. Ethan's heart pounded as he gripped the iron fence. No one else had seen it. No one else cared. If he walked away, Victor might die. The boy clenched his fists, summoning every ounce of courage. He knew he was about to risk everything. "Don't eat that." Ethan's voice cracked but rang loud and clear across the patio. Conversations halted mid-sentence. All eyes turned to the ragged boy standing beyond the railing. Victor froze, his spoon hovering mid-air, and Clara's head snapped toward Ethan, her eyes narrowing with fury. "What did you just say?" she demanded, her voice sharp and icy. Ethan didn't falter, his voice trembling but resolute. "I saw her. She put something in your soup. Don't eat it." A collective gasp rippled through the bistro. Patrons whispered, exchanging wide-eyed glances. Clara's facade of elegance cracked as she rose to her feet, her chair screeching against the stone floor. "You filthy liar!" she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. Who let you in here? You're just trying to cause trouble. Victor's gaze shifted between his wife and the boy. Doubt flickered across his face. "Clara," he said slowly, his voice steady but laced with suspicion. "What is he talking about?" "He's lying," Clara snapped, her polished composure slipping further. "He's just some street kid looking for attention. Look at him. He doesn't belong here." Ethan's fists clenched. "I'm not lying," he said, stepping closer. "I saw her pour something into your soup when you weren't looking. Call someone to test it if you don't believe me." The tension was palpable as Victor studied his wife. Her defensiveness only deepened his doubt. His hand trembled as he set the spoon back on the table. "Clara," he said, his voice now cold and cutting, "you've been acting strange for weeks. What's going on?" Her mask shattered. "You can't seriously believe him?" She spat, her voice rising. "This is absurd." Before she could storm off, Victor's firm voice stopped her. "Sit down," he ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Waiter, call the police." Clara's face paled as the reality of the situation sank in. Her protests grew more frantic, but the cafe patrons were no longer on her side. Whispers swirled, their disdain for her palpable. Ethan stood silently, his chest heaving as relief mingled with lingering fear. He had spoken the truth, but the weight of the moment pressed heavily on his small frame. When the police arrived, Clara's resistance crumbled. As they led her away in handcuffs, her polished veneer gave way to venomous shouts. "You don't understand," she screamed. "I deserved everything he had." The cafe erupted in murmurs as Victor sank back into his chair, visibly shaken. For the first time, he turned to Ethan, his expression a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "You saved my life," Victor said quietly. "I don't even know your name." "Ethan," the boy replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Victor nodded, his gaze softening. "Ethan, you did something today that no one else would have. You spoke up when it mattered most. I owe you everything." The patrons watched in awe as Victor stood, placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, and led him inside the bistro. For the first time, Ethan felt seen, not as a scruffy boy on the streets, but as someone who mattered. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Victor handed Ethan a card. "This is a start," he said. "It's a contact for a shelter and some resources. And if you're willing, I'd like to do more. You deserve a chance." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes, but he managed to nod. For the first time in years, hope blossomed in his chest. Sometimes courage comes from the most unexpected places. Ethan's bravery didn't just save Victor's life. It reminded everyone that even the smallest voices can make the loudest impact. What about you? Have you ever witnessed someone stand up for what's right, even when the odds were against them? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Malik sat at the small table across from Victor, the weight of the afternoon pressing heavily on his thin shoulders. The bustling bistro around them was beginning to return to normal, but Malik felt anything but normal. For so long, he had been invisible, a shadow in the background of everyone else's lives. Yet today, not only had he been seen, but he had also made an impact. A life-saving one? Victor Harrington studied Malik closely. This wasn't just a boy who had stumbled into the spotlight by chance. He was someone with a spark, someone who had the courage to act when others didn't. Victor knew that kind of bravery was rare, and he wasn't going to let it go unnoticed. "You've lived on the streets for how long now?" Victor asked, his voice low but firm, the kind that carried authority yet didn't threaten. Malik hesitated, glancing at his hands. The scars on his fingers told stories he didn't want to share. "A while," he muttered, "since my mom passed. I couldn't stay in foster care. It wasn't safe." Victor leaned back in his chair, a storm brewing behind his sharp gray eyes. He had spent decades surrounded by people who wore masks of civility, who cared more about appearances than substance. But here was this boy, raw and unpolished, standing in truth. The stark contrast to the betrayal he had just experienced from Clara was jarring. "I can't imagine what that's been like," Victor said sincerely. "No child should have to endure that." Malik shrugged, his gaze dropping to the table. "You get used to it." Victor shook his head. "You shouldn't have to. And today, you proved that you're better than the world has been to you. That courage, that integrity, it's rare." The conversation was interrupted by a commotion at the bistro's entrance. Two journalists had arrived, their cameras and microphones poised, eager to capture the scandal unfolding. The whispers of patrons who had witnessed Clara's arrest had reached the media faster than Victor anticipated. He waved them off with a sharp gesture, his patience already frayed. "Not now," he said curtly. "Leave." The journalists hesitated but quickly retreated under his icy glare. Victor turned back to Malik, whose expression was a mix of awe and unease. "You don't need to worry about them," Victor said gently. "They're here for the story, but today isn't about them. It's about you." Malik's brow furrowed. "Me? Why?" Victor's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. "Because you saved my life, and not just from Clara's poison. You reminded me what decency looks like." The weight of Victor's words hung in the air, and for the first time, Malik felt something he hadn't in years: hope. But before he could respond, Victor continued, his tone firm with purpose. "I want to help you, Malik, not just with a meal or a place to stay for the night. I want to give you a real chance at a better life." Malik's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Victor pulled out his sleek phone, tapping quickly before looking up. "I have a foundation that supports at-risk youth. They offer housing, education, counseling, everything you'll need to get back on your feet." Malik shifted uncomfortably. "I don't want to be a charity case." Victor's expression softened, but his voice didn't waver. "This isn't charity. This is a hand up, not a handout. You've already proven your worth, Malik. You've shown you have the strength and the heart to do the right thing, even when it's hard. Now it's my turn to do something for you." Malik stared at Victor, searching for any sign of pity or insincerity, but all he saw was genuine determination. It felt surreal, like a dream he was too afraid to trust. Before Malik could respond, the waiter returned with 2 cups of tea, placing them gently on the table. Victor thanked him with a nod, his attention never leaving the boy in front of him. "Think about it," Victor said after a moment. "No pressure, but if you're ready, we can start right now." Malik hesitated, his mind racing. He thought about the nights he spent shivering under thin blankets, the hunger that gnawed at him, and the constant fear of being ignored or worse. Was this real? Could he trust it? Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." Victor leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Because someone needs to, and because you've shown me something I haven't seen in a long time. Integrity. It's the least I can do." Malik blinked rapidly, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. He nodded slowly, his voice trembling. "Okay, I'll try." Victor's smile widened, a spark of pride lighting his features. "Good. That's all I ask." As they finished their tea, Victor's phone buzzed. His driver was outside, ready to take Malik to the Foundation's facility. Victor stood, reaching into his pocket and handing the boy a sleek card with his personal number. "If you need anything, anything at all, you call me. Understand?" Malik nodded, clutching the card like a lifeline. As they walked out of the bistro together, the whispers of the patrons followed them, but neither paid them any mind. For Malik, this wasn't just a step forward, it was a leap into a future he thought he'd never have. And for Victor, it was a chance to reclaim a piece of himself he thought he'd lost, a belief in the power of kindness and the courage to act on it. As the car doors closed and Malik disappeared down the street, Victor stood on the sidewalk, watching until they were out of sight. The events of the day had shaken him to his core, but they had also renewed something inside him. Sometimes heroes don't wear capes or suits. Sometimes they wear threadbare hoodies and carry nothing but the strength of their convictions. What do you think about Malik's bravery? Would you have done the same in his place? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to share this story if it moved you. It might just inspire someone else to stand up and make a difference. Victor Harrington sat in his quiet study later that evening, the events of the day replaying in his mind like a relentless reel. Clara's betrayal, the moment Malik shouted his warning, the boy's unwavering courage, it all felt surreal. He sipped from a crystal glass of bourbon, the sharp burn doing little to dull the ache in his chest. Betrayal from the person he trusted most was devastating, but the spark of hope Malik had ignited was undeniable. At the Foundation shelter, Malik sat on a clean bed for the first time in years. The room was modest but warm, a world away from the cold, hard pavements he had called home. A staff member had handed him fresh clothes, toiletries, and a hot meal. Yet, as he stared at the folded blanket in his lap, he couldn't shake the disbelief that any of this was real. He was still just a street kid, wasn't he? How had his life flipped so drastically in a single day? The next morning, Malik awoke to the sound of laughter outside his door. Peeking out, he saw other kids playing in the courtyard. Some were his age, others were younger. They looked happy, carefree, something Malik hadn't felt in a long time. Slowly, he stepped outside, unsure of his place among them. "Hey!" a boy called out, tossing him a basketball. Malik caught it awkwardly, and the kids erupted into cheers. For the first time, Malik smiled, a real unguarded smile. Maybe this place wasn't so bad after all. Meanwhile, Victor wasted no time. He called his foundation's director and arranged for Malik to be enrolled in an educational program. "This boy has potential," he insisted. "I want him to have every opportunity." Victor also began to think about his own life. Clara's betrayal had been a wake-up call, painful reminder of how far he'd drifted from the values that once defined him. For years, he had been consumed by wealth and power, building an empire that often felt hollow. But Malik's bravery had shown him something profound. True richness came from the courage to do what was right. A week later, Victor visited the foundation to check on Malik. He found the boy in the courtyard, laughing with the other kids. When Malik saw him, his face lit up. "Mr. Harrington," he called out, running over. "Victor," he corrected gently, a warm smile spreading across his face. "How are you settling in?" It's amazing," Malik said, his voice thick with emotion. "I can't believe this is my life now." Victor placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You earned this, Malik. Don't ever forget that." The two sat on a bench as Malik shared stories about the other kids, his laughter ringing through the air. Victor listened intently, marveling at how much the boy had opened up in just a few days. Malik wasn't just surviving anymore. He was thriving. As the weeks turned into months, Malik's life transformed. He excelled in the Foundation's educational program, showing a natural aptitude for math and problem-solving. Victor became a mentor, guiding him not just in academics, but in life. Their bond grew stronger, built on mutual respect and trust. But Malik never forgot the streets or the people he'd left behind. One evening, he approached Victor with an idea. "I want to help other kids like me," he said earnestly, "the ones who are still out there who think no one cares." Victor's heart swelled with pride. "Then let's do it together." With Victor's resources and Malik's first-hand experience, they launched a new initiative within the Foundation aimed at providing immediate aid to homeless youth. Malik became the face of the campaign, sharing his story with raw honesty. His words resonated deeply, inspiring others to step forward and make a difference. The initiative was a success beyond their wildest dreams. Hundreds of kids were taken off the streets, given shelter, and offered a second chance at life. Malik's bravery had sparked a movement, proving that even the smallest voices could create a ripple effect. One day, as Malik stood on stage at a fundraising gala, he looked out at the crowd and spotted Victor. The man's proud smile was all the encouragement Malik needed. "When I was out there on the streets," Malik began, his voice steady, "I thought I was invisible, that no one would ever see me. But someone did, and because of that, my life changed forever. Today, I stand here to remind you that there are so many more kids out there waiting to be seen, and together we can show them they matter." The crowd erupted into applause, but Malik's eyes stayed fixed on Victor, the man who had believed in him when no one else did, the man who had become more than a mentor. He had become family. As Malik stepped off the stage, Victor embraced him. You've done something incredible, he said, and this is just the beginning. Malik smiled, his eyes glistening with tears. I couldn't have done it without you. Victor shook his head. No, Malik, you were always capable. You just needed someone to remind you of that. As they left the gala together side by side, Malik felt something he hadn't in years. Complete. And Victor, for the first time in a long time, felt hope, not just for Malik, but for himself. What do you think about Malik's incredible journey? Have you ever witnessed or been part of an act of courage that changed someone's life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories might inspire someone to take a stand. As the months turned into years, Malik's transformation became a story that resonated far beyond the foundation. His once uncertain steps had become confident strides, his voice no longer timid, but commanding and filled with purpose. Victor Harrington, now a father figure, often watched with quiet pride as Malik navigated this new chapter, not just for himself, but for the countless others he vowed to help. One crisp autumn afternoon, Malik found himself standing at the edge of a busy park in Asheville. The air was filled with the sound of children laughing and the rustling of leaves. He gazed across the vibrant scene, his heart heavy yet full. Today was a special day, the official opening of the new shelter he and Victor had envisioned. The sign above the building read, "The Harrington Miller Center for Hope." Inside, the shelter was buzzing with activity. Volunteers moved with purpose, setting up tables, arranging care packages, and welcoming guests. The walls were adorned with photos of smiling children and inspirational quotes. But the centerpiece was a large mural painted by local artists. It depicted a young boy in a worn hoodie standing tall, a beacon of hope surrounded by vibrant colors. Victor arrived shortly after, his silver hair catching the sunlight. He greeted Malik with a firm handshake and a warm smile. "You did it," Victor said, his voice tinged with emotion. "This is your legacy." "Our legacy," Malik corrected, his gratitude evident. "I couldn't have done this without you." The two men shared a quiet moment, their bond stronger than ever. But the day was not just about them. It was about the lives they were changing. As the ribbon-cutting ceremony began, Malik took the stage. The crowd fell silent, eager to hear his story once more. He looked out at the faces before him, some familiar, others new, and felt a swell of emotion. His voice, steady but filled with passion, carried through the park. "Not long ago, I was just a kid on the streets, invisible to the world. I thought I didn't matter. But someone saw me. Someone believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. That moment changed my life forever. And now I stand here not because I'm special, but because I'm proof that when you invest in people, when you choose kindness over judgment, incredible things can happen." The audience hung on his every word, many wiping away tears. Malik's gaze shifted to the children sitting at the front, their wide eyes filled with curiosity and hope. "This center isn't just a building," Malik continued. "It's a promise that no one has to face their struggles alone. To every child out there who feels forgotten, you are seen, you are valued, and you are capable of greatness." As he stepped away from the podium, the crowd erupted into applause. Victor joined him on stage, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "I couldn't be prouder of you, Malik," Victor said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've turned pain into purpose." Later that evening, as the festivities wound down, Malik stood outside the center, watching the lights flicker on one by one. He was joined by Victor, who handed him a small, neatly wrapped package. "What's this?" Malik asked, curious. "Open it," Victor said, smiling. Inside was a journal, its leather cover embossed with Malik's initials. Flipping through the pages, he noticed a handwritten note on the first page. "For every story you've yet to write, keep inspiring, Victor." Malik's throat tightened, and for a moment he couldn't speak. Finally, he managed, "Thank you for everything." Victor placed a hand on his shoulder. "Just keep paying it forward, son. That's all I'll ever ask." As the night settled over the city, Malik walked home, the journal tucked under his arm. His journey had been filled with pain, resilience, and triumph. But it wasn't over. He knew there were more stories to tell, more lives to touch, and for the first time in his life, he felt not just hope, but certainty that the best was yet to come. What do you think about Malik's journey? Have you ever witnessed the ripple effect of kindness and courage? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's continue spreading stories that inspire change.